So YouTube came out and announced that they were making some changes to Content ID to reform it and make it better. Let's take a look. In order to understand these reforms, we need to understand a little bit about where they came from and what spurred them. To that, we look to hashtag WTFU. Hashtag WTFU was coined by online personality The Nostalgia Critic in order to express his distaste with the current state of copyright implementation on YouTube. Basically, The Nostalgia Critic is a show where they take movies and review them with a comedic spin, involving aspects of parody and satire as well. It's highly entertaining and relies on clips from films to make it work. However, the people who own the copyrights to these films, whether maliciously or not, would often file copyright claims against these videos and get them either removed or take away the monetization rights of the creators. This affected their channel so much that they ultimately began to change their format. Instead of using clips from the films, they would use recreations, with actors and props standing in for actual footage. But even this hasn't stopped people from copyright claiming their videos. Even though they contain no copyrighted content, they're still getting claimed. Naturally, this has left them in quite a sorry state, which is why they started hashtag WTFU. Where's the fair use? Well, now YouTube's come along and announced a single reform to Content ID, one of the major copyright processes on YouTube, that will at least help. But first, let's take a look at what fair use is. Fair use is a legal principle enshrined in U.S. copyright law, and upheld by the courts, that states that certain uses of copyrighted content, such as songs, movies, or written materials, do not need to be either licensed from the copyright holder or compensated. That is, you don't have to pay the copyright holder in order to use them for those certain purposes, or tell them that you're doing it, even. Now, determining what is and is not fair use can be quite challenging. In fact, even the courts have not come up with a hard and fast rule to determine this. But they have released several factors. The first of these is that it should be part of a larger work, aka transformative. As in, sticking 10 seconds of you saying how much you like a song in front of a song and uploading it to YouTube isn't legal. It's copyright infringement because you haven't changed the work sufficiently. Another element is whether the work is critical or commentative. Effectively, if it's offering some sort of critique, it's far more likely to be considered fair use than if it isn't. Other factors include whether it's for satire or parody, or whether it's being used in an academic or educational setting. Now, some examples of fair use would include a review, which is critical and commentative, and is delivering a criticism of the content in question. You can also use short clips in mashups or parodies under fair use, and editorial content in fact can get away with a lot. It's the same situation with documentaries. Provided you cite your sources and don't use too much of the content in question, you can use a significant amount as part of an academic work. But how does this apply to YouTube? Well, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act was created to regulate digital content online in order to allow content creators to retain control of their work through copyright. Now, in that law, there is a provision known as the Safe Harbor provision, which basically says that websites like YouTube that host user content are not required to regulate that content. They are, however, required to remove content if they receive an official request to do so, because companies believe it infringes their rights. Now, this didn't stop Viacom from suing YouTube as soon as it was acquired by Google. You see, they found numerous copyrighted clips that belonged to them, and although some of these clips were uploaded by Viacom personnel as part of a marketing campaign, they sued, claiming that, well, YouTube basically should have policed itself. Now, YouTube won most of the lawsuits, but ultimately they decided to settle out of court. The exact details of that settlement are unknown, but suffice it to say, immediately after, YouTube introduced 2 automated systems to deal with copyright. Now, the 2 systems in question are the Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown system, and the system we'll be focusing on today, the Content ID system. Now, the Content ID system is the more automated of the 2. Basically, companies submit their content, including music and video, into a database. Now, whenever a new video is uploaded to YouTube, it's scanned against that database to see if any part of it matches. Now, if any part of your video matches something in the database, the copyright holder of that content in the database that your video allegedly matches can do one of several things. They could do something as simple as just track the views to see how it's doing, how your video's doing. Or, more often, they take a more drastic action. Either they'll simply prevent you from monetizing your video altogether for that 2-second clip of some TV show, or they'll straight up monetize your video and take the profit for themselves. This all sounds like a good thing, generally. On the one hand, it does help keep YouTube from being just flooded with movie rips and all that junk. But, on the other hand, this is a huge problem for content creators who use copyrighted content under fair use. I already mentioned the trouble the Nostalgia Critic has, and that's just one example. There are tons more. Heck, even my content, much of it which is original, has been tagged by the Content ID system. Specifically, one video of mine has been tagged 3 times. Once when it was uploaded, once a few months after that, and once a few months after that, all for containing the same song, the Star-Spangled Banner. Now, the Star-Spangled Banner is out of copyright, and the performance I chose, because it was done by the US government, also does not qualify for copyright. But some other companies had versions of the song in the database that sounded similar, and so the system conflated my use with theirs. Now, ultimately, this wasn't a huge deal. Or at least it wouldn't be if the monetization option didn't have one gaping flaw. Whenever a company chose to monetize your video, that video that had maybe just a few seconds of content in it, and it may have been perfectly legal under fair use, well, they would get the money off of that video for however long they had that claim. Now, you can appeal those claims, of course, but the appeal can take up to a month. And ultimately, the company has final say. So, it doesn't really matter if you file an appeal, they can just say, yeah, no, and reinstate their claim. And during this time, they're collecting money on your video. And even if you do finally finish that dispute, which you can do, you can take the dispute further, and they relinquish their claim, you didn't get that money back. Not a penny. So as you can see, there's a great deal of incentive for companies to just tag as much, flag as many videos as possible as theirs, and then monetize them. Because even if they're wrong, even if it's completely legal, even if no one ever sees the claims and stuff, well, they get free money just for doing it. But the trouble is, this encourages abuse. And it happened every day. It has happened. It continues to happen every day. I mean, it's really insane when you think about it. So, what has YouTube done? It has done one thing and only one thing. Content that is flagged, that the copyright holders wish to monetize, well, that money will be set aside. It will not go directly to the copyright holder. It will be set aside until you file an appeal. And if that appeal is successful, then they will give the money to you, as opposed to the copyright holder. This should have happened from the beginning. Seriously, I don't know how YouTube thought it was a good idea to just let them have money based on the loose assertion that they own something in your video. That was stupid. So I would like to say, yes, this is a huge step forward. It really is. I can't even begin to express how much better this will make the system, because without a financial incentive to basically claim everything, I hope that we'll be able to see companies basically kind of losing interest in this automatic system and trying to be more fair and open-minded. I doubt it, but I hope we will. But ultimately, this is just the first step. Realistically, this is a big step forward, but ultimately, it is just one step, and it's a long road. Improving copyright law on YouTube and in the US, and frankly around the world, is going to take time. Nevertheless, I am pleased that YouTube has chosen to step up and at least try to correct some of its mistakes. Sadly, we still have the entire DMCA system to cover. But that's a story for another day, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment down below, and consider subscribing to the channel. It helps a lot. Thank you guys, and I'll see you all next time.